The air hums with a tension no one names. A silent war between the ordinary and the extraordinary raging beneath every step we take. Nietzsche once stared into this abyss and declared that greatness isn't born from comfort. It's forged in the fire of a spirit that dares to dance with chaos. We walk through life draped in habits, each day a thread woven into a fabric we call normal. But what if normal is the cage, and the ones who claw at its bars are the only ones truly alive? Socrates didn't die for preaching peace. He died because his questions slashed through the smug certainty Athens wore like armor. Nietzsche would say he was a warrior of the mind, not a martyr. His death a testament to the power of a will that refused to kneel. Galileo didn't just see stars. He saw a cosmos that mocked the petty thrones of men who claimed to own the sky. To Nietzsche, this was no quiet scholar but a rebel whose telescope was a spear, piercing the veil of a world too timid to face its own vastness. Tesla's dreams didn't fail because they were mad. They failed because they threatened a society addicted to chains it could measure and sell. Nietzsche might have called him an Übermensch in the making, a man whose vision soared beyond the herd's grasp, only to crash against its fear. These weren't gentle souls offering gifts to a grateful world. They were tempests tearing at the roots of a tree too afraid to grow. Their crime wasn't error, but excess, a strength of spirit that outstripped the timid pulse of their time. Have you ever felt it? That shiver when you glimpse something too big, too raw for the room you're standing in? It's not pride that isolates you. It's the weight of a truth the crowd can't carry without trembling. Nietzsche saw this divide and named it. The herd clings to the familiar, while the rare few climb toward a peak where the air thins and the soul expands. He didn't pity the climbers. He envied their solitude, their refusal to bow to the chorus of, "Enough." We cheer the strong who lift burdens we can see, their sweat a spectacle that flatters our own small victories. But a mind that lifts ideas, sharp, untamed, heavier than stone, makes us flinch because it demands we rise to or admit we won't. Strength is safe. It stays outside us, a circus we applaud from the stands. Intelligence, though, invades. It storms the walls we build around our fragile I, leaving us naked before a mirror we didn't ask for. When someone speaks a truth too fierce, we don't hate the words. We hate the echo that lingers, whispering doubts we've buried under years of noise. Nietzsche called this the will to power, not over others, but over the self, a battle most flee before it begins. That echo isn't just noise, it's a call to wrestle with the chaos we pretend isn't there. For Nietzsche, life wasn't about finding peace. It was about embracing the storm and making it yours. Most chase joy in the flicker of a screen, the warmth of a laugh, the rhythm of a day that asks nothing of them. But for those who feel the pulse beneath, that joy rings hollow, a lullaby sung to drown out the roar of a world unmade. Happiness isn't the enemy. It's the mask we wear to avoid the harder prize Nietzsche prized above all: meaning. To chase meaning is to trade ease for a fire that burns through the lies we tell ourselves to sleep at night. Our brains light up with fear when a sharper mind steps into the ring, not because it's a threat, but because it's a reminder of what we could be. Nietzsche saw this fear as weakness, a refusal to leap into the abyss where gods die and humans are born. We're wired for tribes, for the hum of agreement that keeps us warm against the dark. A mind that breaks that hum isn't just alone, it's dangerous, a spark that could set the whole village ablaze. This isn't some relic of the past, it's the world we've built, brick by brick, to keep the wild at bay. Schools drill us to nod, jobs pay us to fit, screens feed us sugar when the bitter truth might wake us up. Look at what rules today. The loud, the fast, the shallow splash of a moment that vanishes before it lands. Nietzsche would sneer at this. He'd call it the triumph of the last man, content to blink at shadows instead of forging light. Yet history hums a quieter tune, one of lone wolves who howled against the wind and carved paths we now walk without a thought. Their rejection wasn't defeat. It was the forge where their spirits hardened into something eternal. Nietzsche spoke of eternal recurrence, daring us to live a life we choose to repeat forever. Not as punishment, but as a test of our courage. He wasn't buried for this. He was ignored, his voice too wild for a world that preferred its gods tame. Hypatia didn't fall to a mob for being a woman. She fell because her mind was a flame that burned through the dogma choking her age. Nietzsche would see her as a sister in spirit, her death not a loss, but a roar of defiance against the small. Turing didn't just crack codes. He birthed a future we lean on while forgetting the man who paid for it with his soul. To Nietzsche, his genius was a will to power crushed not by fate, but by a herd too weak to bear its weight. These aren't exceptions. They're the heartbeat of a story we keep writing page after bloodied page. We don't punish the bold because they're wrong. We punish them because they're right too soon, and we're not ready to follow. So why does this dance keep spinning, this clash between the spirit that soars and the world that squats? Nietzsche would say it's because most crave the cradle, safety, certainty, while the few chase the cliff, where life begins. Comfort is our king, a crown we polish with every choice to look away from the dark. Truth, though, it's a blade, and Nietzsche wielded it not to wound but to free, slicing through the illusions we hug like old friends. We'd rather cheer a fool who shouts than a sage who whispers because noise fills the silence we dread. Nietzsche knew this. He called it slave morality, a love of weakness dressed up as virtue. This isn't ancient history. It's the fire we still circle, telling tales to keep the night from creeping in. The bold don't just tweak the tale, they rip it apart, and we hate them for it until we need them most. So what does this mean for you, the one who feels that tug toward the edge? Nietzsche wouldn't coddle you. He'd demand you embrace it, to become who you are, not who the world wants you to be. Your loneliness isn't a flaw. It's the forge where your spirit sharpens away from the herd's dull hum. Nietzsche saw solitude as sacred, not a curse, but a throne for those who dare to rule themselves. He didn't beg for friends. He sought the strong, the ones who'd meet him in the storm and laugh at the lightning. You don't need the crowd, just the few who see the same horizon and run toward it with you. There's a twist here, though. The world that spits on these spirits leans on them to stand. Every leap, art, science, freedom, came from a soul that said no to the herd and yes to the abyss. Van Gogh didn't paint for praise. He painted because the colors screamed in his blood, and the world mocked him until it wept at his feet. Nietzsche would call him a creator, a man who birthed beauty from chaos while the herd blinked. Pascal didn't shrink from infinity. He wrestled it, his mind a battlefield where faith and doubt clashed until something truer emerged. To Nietzsche, this was no weak priest, but a warrior whose thoughts still cut through our noise. This tension isn't a trap to flee, it's a hammer to swing, shaping a life that doesn't bend to the small. To think like this is to live at the edge, not of the world, but of what it means to be alive. If you've ever felt that pull, that drift from the chatter into something deeper, you're not lost. You're linked to a chain that bends time. Nietzsche didn't just see this, he lived it, a voice crying out for those brave enough to hear. We love these minds when they're dust, their edges smoothed into stories we can stomach. But right now, when the next one breathes among us, will we cheer or will we choke them silent? It's easy to nod at the past. It's harder to spot the flame flickering today, the one we might smother before it lights the way. The world doesn't shift by praising the gone. It moves when we dare to hear the now. So here's the question Nietzsche might leave you with. What fire burns in you that the world can't face, and will you let it blaze even if no one claps?